Hi, this is Stephanie Hansen, and one of the things that I have the opportunity to do is to go behind the scenes and participate in a lot of cool events. And I did a recording of an event that was local here at Fulton Brewery. It was called Moo and Brew, and the idea is that Fulton invited us down to get a behind the scenes look at some of the things that they're doing to support sustainability. So we went and we met with Tanner Luke, who is one of the folks at the brewery, and also we met with a dairy farmer, Margaret Johnson, whose family owns 600 cows. Basically, the idea is that the brewers give their spent grains to dairy cows, not this particular farm's dairy cows, but dairy cows, and then they are able to influence some of the terroir of the cheese and how the cheese tastes. So what Fulton is doing is they are doing some special beers that they're pairing with some cheeses. And they talked a little bit with us about that process and how long it takes to make these beers and what the dairy farm goes through to make the cheese. And then they have these little wooden boards that you can get a sample of each of the special beers and the cheese. So if you want to check that out, they are going to have it while supplies last. But here is a little bit of the discussion, a little bit of background from the sampling event that I went to earlier this week. All right, so you're the brewmaster and making cheese.
Yeah, I'm not a brewmaster. That's a common misconception. I am.
What's the difference?
So the brewmaster he's like the boss. He runs the show.
Got it.
I work for the brewmaster.
Got it.
Yep. So I am a brewer at Fulton. I've been there for 3 years, and I've been professionally brewing for 6. So yeah, that's more or less the short background.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
And what's up with cheese?
So there are, so a lot of this is kind of drawing a lot of the similarities. So one, we kind of go full circle here. One being, we supply all of our spent grain to farmers in Minnesota.
All of it. That's cool.
So what is just a byproduct or just waste for us? We go through between 30 and 50,000 pounds of grain a week.
Wow.
Nothing.
Which is, it's quite a bit. So we have a very resource intensive job. We use a lot of resources. So using all that grain, once we get the wort or sugar water out of it to make beer, it's just trash.
Right.
But it can be feed for cows. So we have farmers who are willing to come and pick it up on a couple days a week to feed their cows with. So it's awesome because it doesn't cost us anything to get rid of it.
Yeah.
These guys are willing to pick it up, and then local farmers can feed their cows for free.
Yeah.
So
and they do all the legwork for it.
Yep.
Is that something a lot of breweries do, or is that unique to you guys?
That's a lot of breweries do it because, there's local farmers that you're not going to say no to anything for free. And like I said, it's a bigger hassle for us to get rid of it than it is for someone who voluntarily wants to take it. So
I love it. So then they have these cows.
Yep. And the cows produce milk, and in some of those products we use in beer. So one being lactose, you can use in stouts and things like that. But they were drawing some similarities with the cheese making process. Lactic acid is something. So they'll culture a cheese like this blue cheese you're going to eat here, which is essentially bacteria. And they keep it at a warmer level, and the bacteria grows and makes it all stinky and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. We get that in beer. So with the beer that we made for this event, we use a combination of 3 different cultures. The one that's the same with dairy is lactobacillus, which produces lactic acid when it consumes leftover sugar in the beer.
And so how many beers did you guys make for this event?
We made that one for this event.
Okay.
So 2 beers, 2 of them are ones that we have we make on a regular basis, and this was specifically for this event. So
I guess she's bringing them in.
Oh yeah, you're getting the full treatment here.
This is great.
So do you then, because you guys have a food truck outside, a permanent Airstream, I guess. It's not a truck.
Yes.
So do you use then those cheeses in the truck?
So I know that we use the Munster cheese, which is this one here in our beer cheese. And the other ones are just new. So
okay.
I think they were just selected based on they were winners for like a cheese festival in Minnesota.
Cool.
So they're kind of random. So But like I said, yeah, that Munster one we do use in our beer cheese.
Will you go through each of the beers again? I know they kind of whispered, but
for sure. Yeah, we'll get yours here, and then we can even do like the pairing top to bottom again. So.
How did you learn how to make beer?
I went to school for marketing and sales at UW Eau Claire.
Thank you.
I'm like
Hospitality.
So I'm like a totally random person in this, but I used to homebrew in college when I was like 20 years old.
Sure.
Was just totally intrigued by the craftsmanship and the science kind of behind it, because fermentation is just kind of crazy. You know, it's like it's like living, breathing stuff.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I had an apprenticeship out of school and just learned everything on the job. And I used to work at a brewery that in an Amish town in the middle of nowhere, Wisconsin, that was haunted. And
Called what?
Sand Creek Brewing Company. It was a haunted brewery, and I used to work there from 5 o'clock at night till 5 in the morning by myself every day.
Where is it?
It's in Black River Falls.
Yeah, I was gonna say actually think I've driven by it.
Yep. So I started there for 2.5 years. The connection there is that Sand Creek used to contract the Fulton beers and do all their bottling before they had their bottling lines. So
nice.
That's my connection to Fulton. And then a couple years later, I had this job. So. All right, so for the beer pairing, we're gonna start with the lightest one first, and that pairs with the blue cheese here. So this is our Session IPA. It's got oats and wheat in it, which adds some body. And then it's got some citrusy hops, which would be Citra, Amarillo, Mosaic. And what I like about it is kind of like that citrus flavor rounds out some of like the acidity and pepper kind of flavor you get in that cheese. It's a fairly light beer, and I think it kind of goes with that because blue cheese isn't something you want to eat. I mean, some people will eat spoonfuls of it, but it's more of like a picking cheese. Mm-hmm. So.
And is this an event that the public can participate in, or did you just do it for?
Yep. So tomorrow's is like an RSVP only, but we will be offering these flights afterwards for people to come in, and then a portion of those proceeds are going to like a brewing and farming environmental initiative.
I love it.
So, yeah, full circle stuff. So yeah, this is a Hopstars beer that we make year round. Nice light, 4% alcohol, pretty low IBU, so it's not very bitter.
It's really, for being so low alcohol, it's pretty tasty. It's like your version of the lawnmower beer.
Yeah.
I like it.
It's the hop choice that really goes in.
Okay, so let's talk about our middle beer.
Okay, middle beer.
Let's.
This is worthy. It's the Whiskey War and Peace. So essentially this beer is our Worthy Adversary recipe, which is like one of our original like 10-year-old beers that we use peace coffee with. And we use like a dark roast, condition it cold. So we add the beans in whole, and aged in Jameson barrels, who is another one of our partners with for the cask mates. And this one, thank you. So yeah, and then we went with the whiskey wash cheese. So I thought that the Munster cheese was just like, bland is the wrong word because it has like flavor, but it can
very
still
mild.
Use like mild is a better word. It can use like the uplift. I like the idea that it was like the whiskey on whiskey because I feel like it just accentuates more of something that's like a creamy cheese. And that beer is like a big, thick beer, so it's a creamy beer to kind of go. Yeah, that's a tough beer to brew. It's a long day right there.
I believe it.
It's a lot of grain. That one itself is between two batches would be almost probably like 13,000 pounds of grain. It's just used to make one tank of that beer. I said like the resource, like how resource intensive some of this stuff is. That's why, once again, the sustainability part, like you have to find ways to just kind of cut down on that because, like, I mean, yeah, weather, grain, like when you need 13,000 pounds of grain to make one batch of beer, it's insane how much work it takes for it just to get up to even that point for me to just work with it. So a lot of things got to be going right. Yeah, so that's the Whiskey War and Peace. And then the last beer was one of the longest projects I've ever worked on with beer. It's been about 3 years to make that. So like we brewed it as it was brewed as a lager originally with some Pilsner and some red. What makes it unique to this event is that we hand selected, so it's like we separated into different barrels, and these ones specifically came out of red wine barrels. So that's where it's in tune with this event, because to make a beer like this just takes years, and the complexity changes. So where this ties back into dairy is that we use 3 different cultures in this: Pediococcus, Lactobacillus, and Brettanomyces. To make it short, Pedio, Lacto, and Brett is what we refer to them as. Lactobacillus is used in this cheese to give it that souring agent to culture it itself. So this was a fun pairing purely based on culture and bacteria, because it's the same bacteria that sours this beer is what goes into that cheese.
This is a beer brew for me specifically.
It's pretty delicious.
Yeah, so it was aged in red wine barrels, Cabernet,
Oh my god.
and we used blackberries on top of it to just give it a little extra fruit forward flavor. I think it drinks more like a wine
It really
almost
does.
than a beer, which I think is just an interesting, for someone who's not necessarily a big beer drinker, I'm like, try that one.
Right.
Because it's almost even like between a white and red wine blend, I
And
think.
it's kind of like a sour, but not as intense.
Yep, and that's something that as time goes on, it smooths out. It loses some of that acidity as it sits in the barrel. So it's like the patience. It was very nice to meet you guys.
Yeah, nice to meet you too, Tanner.
I'll grab
Luke.
I'll grab my snacks for the road here.
He's not going to leave his food behind.
My name is Margaret Johnson, and we dairy farm with my family in southeast Minnesota, about 30 minutes south of Rochester. And it is my father-in-law, my husband and I, and my 4 small kids with a great team of employees. We're dairy farming, and we farm, the River State Bike Trail goes right through our farm. So a lot of people have biked past through Lanesboro, Minnesota,
Sure.
and been past our farm without even knowing it.
Did you grow up in farming, or did you get into it through your in-laws? And
I did grow up in farming. So growing up, my dad milked 27 cows, and we all had a big part in that. And then I went to college and milked cows there. Well, I didn't milk cows; I fed calves there, but I was still in farming there.
Yep.
And then I
College
met my husband at college, and now I'm still in the dairy industry, which is exciting.
yeah,
It's cool.
how long can dairy cows milk?
That's a good question. So our cows have their first calf when they're just under 2 years old, and then they they milk in our herd for quite a while, in relative terms. So the cows in our herd probably are there for like 3 or 4 years, and then they might go for a career change if they're not. Just different things of what might have them leave our farm, whether it may be sometimes they get big and they don't necessarily fit comfortably in our
Yeah.
stalls, and so then it's maybe time for them to have a career change, just because we want our cows to be healthy and comfortable and
When they have
safe.
career changes, does that mean they go to the pasture down the road and perhaps the plant?
Typically, yeah. So we have a local sales barn that they would go there and be taken for beef.
Yeah, great. I love beef.
Yeah, another good industry.
I am not against eating animals at all.
So tomorrow night is the event, which is, like I said, it's kind of dairy in an unexpected place, which is exciting for me when I got the invitation to be here. But it's really just kind of pairing the Fulton Brewery and their sustainability story with, what we do is sustainability, because we really have that in common. Everybody's been asking me, well, what is sustainability to you, and what are some of these practices that you do? And it's hard to think of one thing because it's just what we do every day. So we recycle our water multiple times. We recycle our manure. It goes put on our crops is a way of it being recycled. So we're just living and breathing it every day. So it's hard to pull out examples of, oh yeah, we're doing this. Sometimes you have to have somebody from the outside remind you, well, you're doing this and you're doing this and you're doing this. It's like, well, yeah, we're doing a good job, but
Using all your renewable resources.
Yeah, so we've really used a lot of technology to kind of micromanage our choices and be able to do even a better job with sustainability, because it limits a lot of other resources like labor, manpower, land, like all these other things that you might not typically think of. So about sustainability, so I can kind of help answer some questions. And we don't use their spent grains. There is a brewery close to us in southeast Minnesota. Actually, it's like 2 miles away. And we personally don't use their grains, but I do know their grains go to a local beef farmer. It's something we'd totally be open to. We right now put whey in our feed, which is a byproduct of making cheese.
Right.
So that's a byproduct that we are using. Being a little bit further away from the cities, we don't have quite as much opportunity with some of those things. But they make great feed and great milk in the end. So
All right, so that wraps it up.